everyone, and welcome back to the Beyond the Film podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Hopefully, you are liking the episodes we've been putting out. We're almost at our 10th episode, which is super exciting. Today, we're going to be doing another film director commentary. You guys seem to really like those. So, we are going to be talking about the amazing, iconic, legendary director, writer, and actor and producer, Quentin Tarantino. So, we're going to do the base or main kind of information we talk about in all our director commentaries. So we'll talk a little bit about the movies we've seen, his personal life, timeline of his filmography, some of his notable filmmaking techniques, and the awards and accolades he's received. So I think we can both say that Quentin Tarantino is definitely someone who's had a major impact on us, being film lovers. I've actually seen every single one of his films. I don't know if you have seen everyone, or which ones have you seen?
I have seen a big chunk of them, like a majority of them. I haven't really gone through the whole list, but I've seen a bunch of them, and yeah, like you said, he's really just one of the most iconic filmmakers there is.
Mm-hmm. I really think that he is someone who, we'll talk about this later on, but he is someone who just not only grew up with films, but just kind of grew up with it with an outside perspective. He wasn't as academic as a lot of, filmmakers are with it. And so, he was obviously very serious about it, and he took it very, very seriously as a passion, but he almost had kind of like a childish view of it, being that it's something that he could just play with and explore, and there were no rules to how he could play with it. And I think that's what makes his filmography in particular so distinguishable and unique, because there really is nothing like a Quentin Tarantino movie. There's just certain aspects to it, whether it be the dialogue, whether it be the violence, as we'll talk about. There really isn't anything like a Tarantino movie in mainstream filmmaking, right? So I think he's really an inspiration to a lot of people, us included, I think. And again, I mean, he also really breaks the boundaries of genre films. He doesn't stick to one. He doesn't really have one set path or genre he likes to play around with. He delves into literally everything. Mm-hmm. And it all comes from his own experience or love for older genres as well. So it's really cool. Again, we'll get into all of this, but I think that's something that I've always been really drawn to as a film lover of his work, that he's just able to be so diverse and adapt and bring such life to the screen to so many people. So with that being said, why don't we just get right into it? So we're going to talk first about his personal life. So Quentin Jerome Tarantino, that's right, his middle name is Jerome, what a fitting name, was born March 27th, 1963 in Knoxville, Tennessee, to his mother Connie and his father, who was an actor and producer, Tony Tarantino. Tony actually left his mother before Quentin was born, leaving him to be raised by a single mom. Tarantino and his mother would move many times between Tennessee and Los Angeles as he grew up, and it was this fascination with LA and Hollywood in the 60s and 70s that truly fostered his intense love for films. When Quentin's mother remarried later on to musician Curtis Zatubile, he was encouraged by his stepfather to get more serious about films, and he even attended numerous visits to movie theaters with Quentin until his mother and him later divorced in the late 70s. I was reading also that Quentin's mother actually had a misdiagnosed case of Hodgkin's lymphoma, so Quentin would actually go back to Tennessee to live with his grandparents for less than a year before returning and moving to LA full-time. At just 14 years old, Quentin tried his hand at writing a screenplay based on a popular 1977 Burt Reynolds film, Smokey and the Bandit, which actually is, I haven't seen it, but I know it's very iconic, and I am definitely putting it on my list. His script was called Captain Peach Fuzz and the Anchovy Bandit, and this totally kickstarted his interest in more writing and filmmaking. Quentin also hated school, much preferring to watch movies and read comic books over attending, and he ended up dropping out of high school to start taking this passion more seriously. I remember actually saying even Stanley Kubrick, a very seasoned director, also had a similar relationship with schooling and education, that kind of thing. So it can go both ways with that, but it's interesting to see how that affects things.
Yeah, so Quentin worked as an usher in an adult film theater, started attending acting classes from a nearby theater, even then meeting many people he would collaborate with later on in his directing career. And eventually, he got a career at a video archive store in Manhattan Beach. Everyone he met could tell how much adoration and knowledge he had for films. Buffy the Vampire Slayer actor Daniel Strong used to frequently visit the video store and chat with Quentin about his films. Strong described him as, and I quote, such a movie buff, he had so much knowledge of films that he would try to get people to watch really cool movies. Also, during his time working at the video store, he worked on many of his popular screenplay, including True Romance and Natural Born Killers. He even delved in more into his acting, landing a guest spot as an Elvis impersonator in the Golden Girls episode. Tarantino went to work with the production company Sintel and managed to get his True Romance screenplay seen by director Tony Scott, who ended up loving it and buying the rights to it, quickly making his presence known in Hollywood for years to come.
Yeah, so with that selling of the True Romance screenplay, there came a lot in between that and a lot after that, and that has a lot to do with his actual filmography, which we're going to talk about now. So Tarantino's first actually paid writing gig was for the script to From Dusk Till Dawn, which we all know of, although it would not get produced or released until much later on. He would also later option out the screenplay for True Romance, which means he sold the rights to it, but he doesn't get as much credit as otherwise he would. And sell the script for Natural Born Killers. Although he didn't actually end up liking the final product that was released, he even fought with director Oliver Stone to have his name taken off the film because he was not happy with how Natural Born Killers came out, which is actually very interesting. In January of 1992, he managed to gain funding for his directorial debut with the neo-noir film Reservoir Dogs, which he also started, and was immediately praised by critics following its very successful premiere at the Sundance Film Festival. Harvey Keitel noted being extremely impressed with Tarantino's work, saying in an interview, and I quote, "I haven't seen characters like this in years," which ultimately drew Keitel into sign-on as both an actor and producer for the film. Tarantino drew much of his inspiration for the crime film from many iconic heist dramas such as Reefy and City on Fire, and he was soon approached by many Hollywood producers and directors to write for their projects. Apparently, I read he was even offered to write for films like Speed and Men in Black. He ended up turning down these offers, however, to go to Amsterdam, and where he would write the award-winning script for Pulp Fiction. His beautiful balance between strong dialogue, like we were saying, his non-linear storytelling with multiple stories, and his obsession with exaggerated violence immediately captivated audiences around the world. And it was something unlike critics and audiences alike had ever seen before. So among a plethora of other nominations and wins, including Best Picture and the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival, he won the Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay for Pulp Fiction, which he shared with his collaborative writer and longtime partner Roger Avary. Roger Avary also had met Quentin when he was still working at the video store, I believe. So it's cool how his relationships he built working those oddball jobs, studying acting, kind of maintained when he actually had a professional career. In 1995, Tarantino wrote and directed one of the stories in the film Four Rooms, along with other filmmakers Alison Anders, Alexandra Rockwell, and Robert Rodriguez. Following Tarantino's collaboration with Robert Rodriguez, where they got to meet and talk a little bit more, about their work, the team teamed up to finally bring From Dusk Till Dawn to life in 1996, in which Tarantino also got a lead role opposite to George Clooney, even though the film got negative reviews from critics, which I have to agree with in some respect. I don't know how big of a fan I was of that film. But it was his first real leading role with a screenplay he wrote. So a year later, Tarantino went back to write and direct his underrated crime thriller, Jackie Brown, in 1997, starring Pam Grier. The film was actually an adaptation of an Elmore Leonard novel and paid homage to many of the blaxploitation films of the early 70s, where her appeared in herself. So for those of you who don't know, the term blaxploitation is actually an ethnic subgenre of films where it tried to appeal to more urban African American communities, portraying African American men and women in certain lights, mainly dealing with like crime thrillers. So an example would be Foxy Girls, which Pam Grier actually played in herself, in which a lot of inspiration was drawn from that film into Jackie Brown. For most of the end of the 70s, Tarantino focused back on his acting work. He made his Broadway debut, which I had no idea he actually was on Broadway at all, as a psychopathic killer in a reboot of the 1966 play Wait Until Dark. It actually went on a 16-week run, and although he was not certainly praised by critics, it still went on a very long run with the cast, so he still managed to make his debut there. And even got roles in films like Eddie Presley, The Coriolis Effect, Sleep With Me, Somebody to Love, Desperado, Girl 6, and of course Steven Spielberg's director's trio.
Yeah, so Quentin Tarantino, after that, he came back to the directing game with his massive martial arts hit Kill Bill, a violently stylized revenge picture featuring elements of the Western drama, Italian horror, and traditional techniques of wuxia, which is a Chinese martial arts practice. It starred Uma Thurman as the bride, and although was initially supposed to be released as one whole film with a 4-hour screen time, he opted towards releasing it in two parts. The first volume released in 2003, and the second one in 2004. Also, during this time, he tried his hand at television work, starring as the villain McKenis Cole in the series Alias from 2002 to 2004, and co-wrote and directed the fifth season finale for CSI, in which he was nominated for a Primetime Emmy.
So, did you know that he actually worked in television as well?
I actually did not know that. I didn't know that he wrote CSI either.
Yeah, I mean, he was nominated for an Emmy. That's also one thing that was interesting when we were both doing our research, is that Tarantino, being so famous in the film industry, never just stuck to one thing.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he wasn't acting, he was directing, he was writing, he was producing, he was in film, he was in TV, like, he was doing everything. And I think that's also, drawing on all those experiences and the knowledge he has from all these different fields and all these different mediums allows him to be able to create such amazing pieces of work, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very, very interesting.
Yeah, so after that, his next film was in collaboration with Robert Rodriguez called Grindhouse, and his contribution to the project was released as a separated film called Death Proof in 2007, also drawing inspiration from 70s slasher films. In 2009, the film Inglourious Basterds was released following the story of Jewish American soldiers in Nazi-occupied France during World War II, and not only was it a critical success, but also managed to reach #1 at the box office worldwide. It was nominated for 8 Academy Awards, including 2 for Tarantino for Best Director and Best Original Screenplay. Actually, this is actually one of my favorite movies from him. This is like my top 3. Yeah.
It's definitely a highlight. I think it's if not best, at least like second best. This one, he really nailed it with this one.
Yeah, it's really good. We highly recommend checking this out.
Mm-hmm.
So, Inglourious Basterds also went on to be Tarantino's highest grossing film until the release of Django Unchained in 2012, starring Jamie Foxx, Chris, Christoph Waltz, Kerry Washington, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Samuel L. Jackson. It won an Oscar for Best Original Screenplay and received several other Oscar nominations.
And also, might I just add
Yeah.
that Christoph Waltz, who was in both *Inglourious Basterds* and *Django Unchained*, received 2 Oscar wins, both for Best Supporting Actor from both of these films.
That's crazy.
Like right after each other.
Yeah.
Is that not amazing?
That's amazing.
And it's such, like, for example, going back to *Inglourious Basterds* with his role, I mean, Quentin spent a long time writing that film, right? He really wanted it. He was talking about it was a heavy topic, similar thing to Django Unchained, but he wanted to do it as a genre piece. Like, he wanted to do it in a really stylized way because that's who he is. That's what his films are.
Yeah.
And he wrote the character for, I know you know this, Hans Landa, and he I think auditioned so many different people. And he couldn't find, I think even like Leo DiCaprio was an audition for this role. He couldn't find anyone he liked.
Yeah.
And then Christoph Waltz walked in and he goes, "That's my guy."
Yeah.
Like immediately. And he said he wouldn't have done the film if he couldn't find a Hans Landa. So the fact that, you know, he had so much faith in Christoph, and the fact that Christoph won not only Best Supporting Actor for that film, but for the literal next consecutive film that Quentin did. Like, that's amazing.
That really goes to show also his talent, you know, as an actor.
Yeah, and I remember reading some interviews about how he talked about, you know, his career wasn't as big as he wanted it to be. Like, it wasn't jumping off as high as it could have. Yeah. And because Quentin gave him that chance, I mean, like two Academy Award wins. Yeah. And now he's you know, doing very well for himself. He's, you know, obviously maybe not as mainstream as some other actors, but when he gives his performances, he does a really good job. So, very, very happy with that. Yeah.
So, Tarantino mentioned how the film was born from his love of spaghetti westerns and wanted to create a film that discussed the horrors of the history of slavery in America, but more as a genre film. He then created the screenplay for another Western film, The Hateful Eight. However, after having the original script leaked, Tarantino was debating dropping the project and releasing the story as a novel instead. However, after a successful live reading of the leaked script, he decided to keep going with the project and released it in 2014, starring Samuel L. Jackson, Kurt Russell, Amber Tamblyn, Channing Tatum, and Jason Lee, among others. Tarantino also made the decision to have the film first released as a roadshow presentation on 70mm film in special formatted theaters before their digital release. According to critics, he also added parts for the formatted theaters.
So that was actually a really interesting decision by him.
Yeah.
And I wanted to talk a little bit also about Django, both Django and The Hateful Eight, because they both were Westerns. And Tarantino talked about how he had a love for spaghetti Westerns. For those of you who don't know, spaghetti Westerns were kind of this subgenre of the Western genre, and I think it was late 60s, early 70s. It mainly kickstarted from Sergio Leone's The Good, Bad, and the Ugly. It was that kind of filmmaking style of those Westerns that became really popular. And a lot of those, like, Italian and European companies were the ones to make those kinds of Westerns. Like, it's your really, like, stereotypical Western that you can think of like the cowboy, the music score, and Sergio Leone is really the one who kickstarted it. And Quentin actually mentions multiple times how Sergio Leone is a really big inspiration to him. So it's cool how, you know, we see it in all of his other works. We saw the implementation of the blaxploitation genre, the spaghetti westerns, the martial arts films. He draws inspiration from so many different things, And it's almost like he's got such an amazing memory, I think. Really. Like, you can tell that he grew up with those films because he has such a special connection to them and those genres. And so he's able to kind of pull from them and make these films that, that pay homage and tribute to some films this generation may not know of or may not have seen. So I think in that way, it's really cool that he's able to tribute past filmmakers and films and remind us of what the foundations were of film, So, with that being said, his last film released in theaters so far was in 2019, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which again paid homage to his childhood in LA in the 60s and 70s, as well as to some of the great stars of the industry at the time. And of course, highlighting the Manson murders because it's Quentin Tarantino. It's Manson murders, so why not?
Mm-hmm.
He wants that violence. So famous 60s, 70s LA's actors and actresses. Rick Dalton, Sharon Tate in particular were the two main ones, especially, and as well as Brad Pitt's character, who's a stuntman. It did well critically, although there were some mixed reviews over its ending. It also went to win many Academy Awards and other nominations. Tarantino also famously worked as a producer for both smaller and foreign films, to give more attention in the Western industry, with works such as Iron Man, which is actually, I believe, either a Chinese or a Japanese film in the early 2000s, I think, Hostel, Hero, and Hellride. He also mentioned on numerous occasions that he would love to collaborate and work on a comic book film, and tried many times early on in his career, although with no success. I would love to see him.
I feel like for him to work on a comic book film, he would need all the creative freedom.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that's actually one thing. I think comic book films are very much
reserved,
filtered. Yeah. There's a special system of how they can be made. Those, like Marvel Studios, DC Studios, for example, DC Comics, they always have final say in those films. Like, it isn't as the same as like independent studios or other film studios. So I think if he would do one, it probably actually maybe would even be independent. Yeah. It would be kind of like a Sony thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I feel like he would get more creative freedom from Sony than Marvel or DC.
Yeah, it would be like one of those kinds of things where he takes it to an independent, just buys the rights from one of the characters. Yeah. But that would be so cool. I really think he could bring something. I feel like a lot of his films already have those comic book aspects. Like, he draws from that.
But I feel like also, like, now the newer generation of comic book fans are very different, so I feel like they wouldn't really,
that's true,
like, get that it's a Quentin Tarantino film. Like, it will be stylistically very different from anything we've seen before in a comic book film, so I feel like, to some extent, I feel like I can get why he kept, like, trying and it didn't work out for him. Yeah. So I feel like, that would be one of the things.
I feel like his comic book film would be like an 80s or 90s comic book film.
I would love that, like, honestly.
I know. I think the problem is you're right. Like, mainstream audiences right now have a certain expectation of comic book films. Joker actually was able to kind of break that a little bit. Yeah. Joker really pushed the boundaries with that, and people are seeming to like it, but I think you're right. It's going to be hard for him to have a good commercial success with that film, although cinephiles and people who maybe also experience the comic book genre in the 80s and 90s or older times would love it. I would love it, I know. Yeah. So we'll see if it ever pans out. I mean, he's still got a long way, hopefully, or long selection of films to come. So we'll see how that goes.
Honestly, I would be open for him to do like a comic book TV series, maybe, if he was open to that.
That's actually a good idea.
Yeah.
I never thought of that. That would actually be very interesting. Yeah. Or even a short series.
Yeah, like a short comic book series written and directed by Quentin Tarantino.
With just like a bunch of blood everywhere.
I would love that. I would honestly enjoy that a lot. I feel like it would be more enjoyable just because it's Quentin Tarantino.
Oh, of course it would be. I would love to even get, like, I think it would be funny if he did that, because I know a lot of other the big debate over, like, for example, like Scorsese and Coppola saying how those Marvel films, those comic book films, are like adventure amusement park films.
I mean, if Quentin Tarantino did a
That's
film
like,
for Marvel, I feel like they would have to give him all the creative freedom, because if they
right.
didn't, it wouldn't be a Quentin Tarantino film.
But it'd be interesting to see if he was able to embrace it in a different light.
Yeah,
If that
that's
would make
true.
a difference
Yeah,
in their eyes.
that's true.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, what happens if you have Tarantino do it
Yeah.
rather than just like it be a studio knockout?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, up for debate. We'll see. We'll see if we get one in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. You never know. Maybe.
We'll see.
So now we are going to be discussing some of his filmmaking techniques. So, being someone with such a profound knowledge of films, Quentin Tarantino loves drawing inspiration from specific films and classic genre styles for his films. He has cited his top 12 films to be Apocalypse Now, The Bad News Bears, Carrie, Dazed and Confused, The Great Escape, His Girl Friday, Jaws, Pretty Maids All in a Row, Rolling Thunder, Sorcerer, Taxi Driver, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Pretty good list.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty good list.
Yeah, and I mean, it really hits those like Carrie hitting like the horror notes.
Yeah.
Good, Bad, the Ugly, like that Sergio Leone kind of western.
It's a nice blend. Like
it's
his
a nice
list.
blend.
Yeah.
And I really can see his love for Taxi Driver, because I feel like that tense aspect behind it.
Yeah.
I think he really likes to play with.
Yeah. I can see like all the different genres.
Dazed and Confused, I love that.
I love it too. I feel like that one is more like his love for like indie films, or like more like films that are like not as crazy as the other ones.
Yeah, they're their own thing. You can have a balance.
He also said his favorite film, having been released since being a director, was Battle Royale. Oh my god, I love Battle Royale.
Me too. I love Battle Royale.
It's so, I can see why he likes it.
It's a battle, like, it's literally...
It's basically Hunger Games, but 100 times better.
Right.
And it's like Asian people, so it's like...
and it's a Japanese film.
Yeah.
It's crazy, really.
You guys just have to check it out. We can't really say that much, but you guys
It's like the kids' version of Hunger Games, but really bloody.
Extremely bloody and gory. It's like what Hunger Games?
Right up Tarantino's alley, basically.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Yeah, we highly recommend checking out Battle Royale. And his favorite film of the 2010s to be The Social Network.
I love that film also. Yeah. David Fincher is one of my favorites as well.
Yeah.
David Fincher, like Seven, Fight Club, Gone Girl, Social Network, Curious Case of Benjamin Button. I'm probably missing tons, but like he's amazing.
Yeah.
And I definitely really like that one. And Aaron Sorkin. I mean, you gotta appreciate Aaron Sorkin's screenplays.
Yeah.
Like that guy is just pacing was everything, and he just nails it.
Yeah,
so,
and also like an amazing performance from Jesse Eisenberg as Steve.
Right.
Not Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg.
Steve Jobs. Even Andrew Garfield actually did a good job.
Yeah, he did. He was really good in the movie as well.
I feel like he didn't have too much like room. It was pretty like straightforward character, with not like it was kind of average as well. Like other than like the foreign aspect, it wasn't really.
Yeah.
At least like with Mark Zuckerberg, like you had something you could go with.
Yeah.
But I don't know if there was too much for him to like play with, and I think he did a good job given his character circumstance, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And of course, I didn't even know Rooney Mara makes that little cameo in the beginning of the film.
Oh right, yeah.
When she's on the date with Jesse Eisenberg, which is really funny. So overall, I think. And Armie Hammer, by the way, can we just start? We have to talk about this for a minute. I had no idea that Armie Hammer played both those twins.
Oh, right. Yeah, he played a dual role.
I don't know why, but it just didn't occur. I didn't even recognize that as Armie Hammer.
Yeah, I couldn't recognize him.
I looked it up later, and I was like, there's no way.
Armie Hammer, also a very underrated actor.
Really, yeah. I'm getting more. I'm starting to go through a little more of his work.
Yeah.
And I think I'm finally seeing it and appreciating it actually a little bit more. So
And
good
he
for
was
him.
really good in Call Me by Your Name.
Oh, I still have to see that film.
Oh, that was a really good film.
I know. I've heard by many people. I definitely have to check out that film.
Okay, so back to his filmmaking techniques. Tarantino is arguably most well known for his love for the aesthetic of gruesome violence in any form, always finding ways to incorporate those elements in his carefully crafted films. The violence is always a mix of realistic and super stylized violence.
So yeah, it's not a Tarantino film, as we said. If it's not, there has to be some element of like gruesome violence.
Yeah, there has to be.
I think like the first time he was really able to play with the like dedicate a film to that violence was Kill Bill.
Kill Bill, yeah, definitely.
I think. I mean, Death Proof a little bit. Actually, even from Dusk Till Dawn as a screenwriter, like you got to like
not
really
as much,
go at it.
Not as much as Kill Bill though, because Kill Bill had so many many violent scenes.
Like
yeah.
I think from Dusk Till Dawn was more like horror violence.
Yeah.
Whereas Kill Bill was just like gruesome violence.
Yeah.
Like he just like blood,
yeah.
Wakuzas, blood, sword.
But it was done really well.
It was just a fun time. Like it was just an enjoyable movie, even though it was like so disgusting at times.
Yeah.
There was something amazing about it. And also, I think it was a more like comedic approach to it as well. Like when you get like the fountain of blood coming out.
Yeah. Oh my god. Yeah.
Just for the hell of it, just adding in those like stylized, exaggerated effects of the violence, I think really helped in that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's his trademark. I know there's a meme, of. It's like like an alcohol store, and there's a wine bottle that's still on the floor, and it looks like a puddle of blood, and it's just written and directed by Quentin Tarantino. I think I sent that to you.
Oh, yeah, I think you did.
It's one of my favorite memes, because if you get it, you get it.
Yes.
So you can search it up, the wine bottle of Quentin Tarantino. But yeah, so in terms of his camera work, which was also a really big part of his filmmaking style, Tarantino is a big fan of wide shots, crash zooms, close-ups, and trunk shots, which I love his trunk shots. So his wide shots allow you to absorb kind of like the full frame of details within a scene, and it helps to build tension for the power the next sequence of scenes, which is very important. And on the opposite end, he has also extreme close-ups, which allow the audience to be forced on focusing on specific details Tarantino wants you to see. And it sets the mood to help kind of piece things together as the audience wants to. So for example, there's one scene where he does an extreme close-up of just like Uma Thurman's toe. I think it's in Kill Bill. Just kind of focusing on random details that help you piece together what exactly is happening in the scene. Whereas in his wide shots, he's really allowing you to kind of feel for everything in the picture. Like you have to decide what you want to see and what you don't. And those ways of manipulating the frame and the camera also kind of help progress the dialogue or allow there be room for dialogue to play. Crash zooms have definitely been more popularized to Quentin's work, using that sort of snap zoom to heighten the drama of any given moment, whether it be the introduction of a character or even to give us a sense of like disorientation in the grand scheme of the scene. And this use of heavy handwork, although not used very often, helps to make the film really more enjoyable. So for crash zooms, one very famous one is Leonardo DiCaprio's character in Django Unchained. The first time we meet him is through a crash zoom where he kind of like nods to the camera and puts up his drink. And it's just like a really like a very uneasy snap zoom, almost very heavy with the camera, almost as if he's not supposed to do that. But it's that level of disorientation, that level of uneasiness that helps add another layer of emotion to his film, which is, I think he's probably one filmmaker who has definitely mainstreamed that technique or popularized it, because I don't really see that in any other person's work, although I could be wrong. Tarantino is so incredibly gifted. He's even able to make car trunk scenes visually striking. Quite literally having the camera angled inside the car. He mentioned actually in an interview, and I quote, "Yes, being inside a trunk is the most magical thing you can do." That is amazing. This sense of closeness and almost kind of like intimacy in these secret speculative moments with the characters ensures that the audience feels they are being brought on the journey with these characters, or at least using POV shots to make this possible. So, for example, you've got trunk shots in Pulp Fiction, you've got trunk shots in Reservoir Dogs, most specifically. You've also got POV shots. Another interesting example of the POV shot would be in Inglourious Basterds, when Brad Pitt and I forget who else is in that scene. They're carving the Nazi kind of symbol on Christoph Waltz, on Hans Landa, and they do a POV shot. And what's interesting is that these shots always help to emphasize the upper hand of the characters, because the camera is always low angled, so they're looking down on whatever the POV is or whatever's happening where the camera is stationed. So it's always kind of like a revenge, or a just like, you know that they're winning, but you just want to see what happens. Interesting kind of shot. And also one thing before we go to the last part is dialogue. He makes dialogue seem like the easiest thing to write, when in fact the level of depth and complexity to his writing can only really be achieved by Tarantino. I don't think anyone else can do that. He's able to make, he loves his long dialogue. His scenes could be going on 8 minutes at one time, no break. Just dialogue. Just back and forth. No breaks, no cuts in the camera. But he's able to use them to build and not to backtrack, or not to create a stagnant nature in his work, which a lot of times long dialogue does. So it's hard to not only kind of structure that dialogue in a specific way, but present it alongside the camera work. Are you going to cut the camera while you have that long dialogue going, or are you going to keep the camera still and you're just going to have that scene go on for 7-8 minutes? Are you going to risk it feeling like it's gone on forever? But he almost always reaches that line, but never crosses it, which I think takes that risk, but uses it in a really, really good way. Reservoir Dogs, first directorial debut, amazing example of this. That scene where Harvey Keitel and Steve Buscemi are talking for, I think the scene goes on for like at least 5-6 minutes. No camera cutting, just them two in a random room with heavy dialogue. It's all about the writing. It gives it a moment to shine, and they just talk about the uneasiness of what has happened and what went wrong. And when I think it was Tim Roth that got shot, it's a really amazing scene to watch and to study from as well if you're really into writing, because he lets it shine. He doesn't add. It's funny because he loves his violence and he loves all these other elements, but he never takes it away from the writing, the story of the substance of what the film is. So that's my 2 cents on that piece.
Yeah, so Quentin Tarantino also has a strong affinity for finding the right music for his work. Rather than choose his pieces of music in post-production, Tarantino likes to use the songs he thinks will fit with his themes as inspiration during filming. And it also makes it more interesting in the way he is able to freely edit the sounds and music because of this. So I think that all of his scores are so unique and so different in their own ways. Like, for example, like Kill Bill, that soundtrack is so iconic. Like, everyone knows that one piece of
that Nancy Sinatra scene, song Bang Bang.
Yeah.
I listen to that sometimes. Oh my god, it just puts you in a mood. It really is just like, it's so perfect. I love that song. If you haven't checked out that song from the soundtrack, please do. It plays in the opening scene.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Even in like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I remember like the score being really good.
Yeah,
Like he just
actually,
knows.
I'm very pleased with that. I think.
Yeah, he just knows how to choose the right music and where to put it at the right time.
And I think it makes his editing more unique, I guess,
Yeah,
or like the fitting of his music in his scenes more unique. The fact that he picks it beforehand, because
yeah,
music is like a story in itself, right? If you use it the right way.
yeah,
So it's cool those two art forms going hand in hand. What they can do for a film, and what it he lets it guide the sense of his scene, and that helps I think a lot in the editing process and then the final execution of the film. I think.
yeah, exactly.
So,
Hmm.
no, he's definitely got a lot of amazing techniques that are very specific to him, but really make amazing movies, amazing scripts, amazing pro- pro- production things. He's just all around very, very talented. So with that being said, speaking of his talent, we're going to talk finally about his awards and accolades that he has won specifically, not his films. His films have won a lot of their awards, but we're talking about anything that he specifically has won. So we'll start it off. It's a long list. Okay, so we have Best Original Screenplay Oscar for Pulp Fiction in 1994. He wrote the screenplay. Best Original Screenplay Oscar for Django Unchained in 2012, which he wrote. Another Best Original Screenplay BAFTA for Pulp Fiction in 1994, and Best Original Screenplay BAFTA for Django Unchained in 2012. A whoa, oh my god, I can't talk. Critics' Choice for Best Original Screenplay for Django Unchained in 2012. A Critics' Choice for Best Original Screenplay for Hateful Eight in 2015. A Critics' Choice for Best Original Screenplay for Once Upon a Time in 2019. A Critics' Choice for Best Picture for Once Upon a Time in 2019. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, we're just saying Once Upon a Time for short. A Golden Globe for Best Motion Picture for Musical or Comedy for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood in 2019. I did not know Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was in the musical or comedy. I mean, I guess it kind of fits in comedy.
For
But
like the genre.
yeah, but that was funny. I thought it would be more drama, but I think that was
Yeah.
interesting that it won in that category. Yeah, so Golden Globe for Best Screenplay for Pulp Fiction in 1994, a Golden Globe for Best Screenplay for Django Unchained in 2012, and a Golden Globe for Best Screenplay for Once Upon a Time in 2019. The Sitges, I really don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and I apologize if I'm not. The Sitges Film Festival Award for Best Director for Reservoir Dogs in 1992. Sitges Film Festival Award for Best Screenplay for Reservoir Dogs in 1992, and he won the Sitges Film Festival Time Honorary Award in 1996.
So he won the Film Independent Spirit Award for Best Director for Pulp Fiction in 1994, Film Independent Spirit Award for Best Screenplay for Pulp Fiction in 1994, the same year, Cannes Film Festival Palmes d'Or for Pulp Fiction in 1994.
It's a huge deal, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, that's like the top award you could win at this film festival.
Yeah, and for Pulp Fiction in 1994. Nominated for 6 Grammys for original scores. Wow, I actually didn't know that he was nominated for.
I think Once Upon a Time was included in that list. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. He actually, we were talking about how much we love his scores. So they got nominated for Grammys.
2005 Icon of the Decade Award at the 10th Empire Awards. 2007 Lifetime Achievement Award at the Malkanin Palace in Manila. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing that right. 2008 Filmmaker on the Edge Award at the Provincetown International Film Festival. 2010 Order of Merit of the Hungarian Republic along with Lucy Liu and Andy Vanna for producing the 2006 film Freedom's Fury. Actually, this was actually not a bad film.
I lied. This is one film I have not seen.
Freedom's Fury.
No.
It was not a bad film. I think that you should check it out.
I will.
It's pretty good. The next one I am going to butcher. 2011 honorary Caesar from the Academy.
Caesar? You're gonna have to accent on it, César.
Sir, I don't know how to speak French.
Oh my god, that's shameful.
Listen, when I didn't have to take French after whatever grade I saved myself. I think I saved myself.
Okay, you know what? I want to hear you say the rest of the sentence and see if you can say it.
Okay. 2011 honorary César from the Académie des Arts et Techniques du Cinéma.
Almost, yeah, that's kind of good, yeah. You basically got it.
Okay. 2013 Lifetime Achievement Award by the Rome Film Festival. Actually, this one was big too.
Yeah, that's very big.
Yeah. And 2013 Prix Lumière at the 5th...
Prix, child. Prix. You gotta get your French accent.
Then why don't you pronounce it?
I'm fine. Prix Lumière at the 5th Film Festival Lumière in Lyon, France.
Okay, thank you for showing off.
You gotta show off that accent. But yeah, that was a very, very long list.
Yeah, as you guys can tell that he's, highly successful, and we can see why. Because of
I mean, he's technically really only been working for the past 3 decades.
Yeah.
He's still got a lot of room to go. And we are so excited to see how he, adapts and does in the future, and whether or not he always brings that sense of old Hollywood to new Hollywood. Yeah. And I love that. I'm a huge fan of old Hollywood.
Yeah.
And I continue to really adore those kinds of films. It brings me back to the basis of why we love film. And it's interesting to see how those techniques have evolved. But I hope that he continues to do that. Yeah. Even as we move towards very modern techniques and very different ways of filmmaking, I would love to see, those aspects brought back. Because they just make things more interesting. They make things more nostalgic.
Also, we never know, he could be writing some scripts during quarantine.
Knowing him, I'm sure I'm positive 100% that he's taken this time to knock out a bunch of stuff. Also, one thing ending this podcast off, or episode off, he is just someone who just had a natural talent. You know what I mean? People can work at it.
Yeah.
But maybe you have a bit of a gift, and if you really work at it, you can make something. But I think he's just someone who just he was born to be amazing in this creative. And I'm so glad that he started to pursue it and take it seriously.
Yeah.
Because holy man, he is on another. His commitment to his work, his genius of just coming up with the most far-fetched ideas and making them seem so normal is something I admire so much. And as a young creative, I wish I could say that I had that kind of talent, because it's really just so inspirational. He took his love and he made something of it. I think that's what any person wanting to be successful in life would aspire to do.
Yeah.
Take your love and do something with it.
And
he did it.
And also work hard at it. Don't give up.
Yeah, I mean, he worked for 2 decades. Late 70s, 80s, oddball jobs. I heard he worked as a something engineer, I think, maybe, or he worked as he worked as an usher at a film theater while taking classes. He worked at a video archive store. He was doing oddball jobs, all while coming up with ideas, all while writing scripts, all while working at his craft. It's never too late for anyone. It's going to take time. It may take time. You may get it right away. You might get it in 2 decades like he did. But if you really love it and you have a talent for it, it's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
He's proof of that. So yeah, all around amazing, incredibly talented, cool guy. I love watching him in interviews. He's so nerdy about film. You can just tell he loves what he does.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy we decided to dedicate a director commentary episode to him, because he 100% deserves an episode.
And we highly, recommend for you guys to not only like check out his film, but also just like research more about him because his story is so inspirational because he was so passionate about film. He didn't give up to,
Yeah.
do what he
And
wanted.
and especially if you're someone who wants to get into screenwriting or filmmaking, he's done a ton of interviews talking about his own processes, his own experience,
Yeah.
where his mindset is, where he when he comes to writing and directing and producing a film. And it's really good information for anyone who's looking into those kinds of things. So if you would look at anyone to get advice on those things, go to Tarantino because he will be your guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, with that being said, I think again we had as always an amazing time learning more about this wonderful human being and talking about him and just admiring and appreciating his work and dedication to the industry. So thank you so much for listening again. We are almost at 10 episodes. This is our 9th one. We cannot believe how far we've come,
Yeah.
even in a short amount of time. And again, we thank you so much for your support in sharing our episodes, listening, liking. It's just it makes everything worth it for us, even on our account, our Instagram account as well.
Yeah.
So keep an eye out on the account for continuous content throughout the week, our reviews, our recommendations, and another episode in another 2 weeks. So thank you so much, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.